This is the video tutorial for the Happy Days Cornwall holiday bag. The Cornwall is designed to gather up, and it has toddles to close. You can use it for a wash bag, a swim bag, or whatever you'd like. And this is how you make it. You'll need fabric for the outer, fabric for the lining, some cord or ribbon, 2 toddles and a safety pin and a heat erasable pen. We'll start by making the handles. Place your handle fabric pretty sides down so you're looking at the back and fold it in half as I'm doing. It's best to be done on the ironing board, to be honest, and press. Open out and then place this edge on this crease line you've just made. And once again, press. I've pressed it and now I'm going to bring this edge over to the centre crease again. And once again, press. Finally, fold over, once again, and press. I've pressed it and I've also added some clips along the open edge. I'm now going to take it over to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew along the open edge, fairly close to the edge, and then exactly the same along this edge. You could use your fancy stitch here if you want to. I've sewn all along the one side and all along the other side, and I've also repeated exactly the same for the other strap. Now I'm going to put them to one side while we work on the main bag. Using your template, mark the position of the darts on the back of both your outer and your lining pieces. Using your dart mark, pinch it together and ensure that the lines either side line up, and when you're happy with that, add a pin or a clip, and then carefully take it over your sewing machine and sew along that line. I've sewn along the line and that's my first dart made, and I'm going to do exactly the same for this one. So using the marks, line up. It's a bit tricky sometimes because you're sort of working backwards. And when you're happy with that, as we did before, add a clip and sew all the way down. I've sewn the darts on both pieces of my lining fabric, so both my darts are done, and I'm going to repeat the whole process for the outer fabrics. I'm now working on the darts on my outer fabric, so I'm looking again at the wrong side of the fabric and I've got my dart triangle marked, and once again I'm going to pinch it together, ensure that the 2 lines match up, and when I'm happy with that I'm going to add a clip and once again sew carefully along that line. I've sewn along all of my dart lines And that's my darts finished for the outer. We're now working on the lining again. Place your two lining fabrics right sides together, so pretty side to pretty side. Line up all the sides and the bottom edges and add some clips. I've added my clips and I've ensured when I get to the dart pleat that the pleats face towards the centre. This will give a much neater finish when we sew it. And I've also remembered to leave my gap sign because this is where we'll be turning the bag through later. One thing as well, ensure that your pleats match up on both sides, as mine do. I'm now going to take it over the sewing machine and using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, carefully sew all the way around. Be a bit bumpy over your darts, and when I get to my gap I'm going to stop and backstitch again, and then sew all the way around to the end and stop. I've sewn all the way around using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I've remembered to leave my gap, and I'm going to leave it this way out for the moment, and I'm going to put it to one side. We're now working on the outer of the bag. Place your outer fabrics right sides together, so pretty side to pretty side. And now we're going to mark the space we need to leave for the channeling. Measure 5 centimetres from this edge and make a mark. Measure 7 centimetres from this edge and make a mark. And do exactly the same. 5 centimetres, make a mark. 7 centimetres from the top and make a mark. Line up all the sides and your seams and add some clips. I've added all my clips and I've ensured that my darts face towards the centre. And I'm going to take it over the sewing machine now, and starting at the top, sew until I get to that first mark and stop. Then start once again on the second mark and sew all the way around. Once again it'll be bumpy over your darts, following up until we get to this mark and stop once again, and then restart and sew to the top and stop. And that way you'll have your hole, your gap for your channeling. I've sewn all the way around, remembering to leave my gaps for my channeling on either side. I'm now going to turn it the right way out and press. I've turned the outer the right way out and I've pressed it. And I've measured 9 centimetres from this edge and I've put a pin. This is for the handle placement. I've done exactly the same for this side. I've measured 9 centimetres in and added a pin. We're now going to add the handle. Take your handle that you made earlier and with the folded edge, place it where your pin is. Make sure that it faces downwards. It does look a bit strange, but it'll be fine when we've joined it all up. So make sure it faces downwards and then add a clip. I've added my clip to this side and I've repeated for this side as well. Make sure that you're only clipping through one side of the fabric. I'm now going to take it over the sewing machine and tack fairly close to the edge. You won't see these stitches in the final make, they're just holding stitches. I'm going to sew across the top on this side and on the top of this side. I've tacked the handles on this side. I've made sure it only goes through the one side of fabric, and now I'm going to turn it over and do exactly the same for the other side. I've found the best way to make sure everything lines up is to use the strap that you've just put on, which you've measured, and just place your other strap directly over it and add a clip, and this way everything will be perfectly matched up. I'm now going to tack quite close to the edge once again across the top of each strap. Again, I'm only going to be sewing through the one side of my bag. I've tacked both sets of handles into place, and now I'm going to place the outer inside the lining we made earlier. This is my lining, which is still turned the wrong way out. This is my outer, which is turned the right way out. My handles are facing downwards, and I'm going to place everything inside the lining. I've turned it round so you can see, and I've lined up these side seams, and I've lined up all the top edge, and I've ensured that the handle is still facing downwards. I'm now going to take it over the sewing machine and using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew all the way around, joining the outer to the lining. I've sewn all the way around, joining my outer to my lining. I'm now going to turn it the right way out through the gap I left in the lining. I've turned it the right way out, and next I'm going to fold in the raw edges of the gap and sew across. I've sewn up the gap in my lining, and I've pushed the lining inside the outer. I've also pressed it, and I'm now going to take it over to the sewing machine and carefully top stitch all the way around. I've top stitched carefully all the way around. I made sure that my handles were facing away as well as I sewed, and now I'm going to make the markings for the channeling. We're now going to make the marks for the channeling. Measure 3 centimetres from this edge and make a mark. Measure from this edge 6 centimetres and make a mark. From this edge measure 3 centimetres and make a mark. From this edge measure again 6 centimetres and make a mark, and then get your ruler and join the marks up and draw a line as I've done. Then turn your bag over and repeat for the other side. I've drawn my lines, and now I'm going to take it over the sewing machine, and I'm going to follow these lines and sew all the way around just the 2 pieces of fabric, and I'm going to also repeat for the second line I drew. I've pressed out all my marks, and now I'm going to add my cord. I've added a safety pin to the end of one of my pieces of cord. I'm going to thread it through the gap on one side all the way around so it comes out the same side. I've threaded all the way around. I've added my toddle and I've tied a knot, and that's the first side done. I've added my cord on the opposite side, starting and finishing this side, and that's your Cornwall holiday bag all finished.